Greetings and welcome to this short presentation on the teaching expectations at our Yasat private school. My purpose here is to induct you into what is expected, and although your grade leaders, your HODs, your senior leadership team will help guide you, it is important that you understand where I'm coming from as we lead this school together. The key driver in all that we do at our Yasat is our vision. When you are engaging students in the classroom, covering specific subject content, undertaking innovative and creative teaching practices, you do so in order to help our school achieve our vision. So this particular presentation is about exploring teaching, and I'm going to just discuss quickly what teaching is all about, maybe something about what teachers do, and why they do it, and most importantly, how can they do it well? At the end of the day, teaching is part of all of us, and collectively it is our capacity to achieve the intentional learning outcomes in all students. That means that effective teaching is very much an evidence-based practice where we take the outcomes, we implement a strategy, we use evidence to tell us whether that has been successful or unsuccessful, we reflect and we start again. So let's get back to that notion of what is teaching. In recent times there's been a real explosion in understanding how people learn. Once upon a time there was a big debate around this notion of whether teaching was an art or was it a science or was it a bit of both. And it was thought that everyone was born to be a teacher, and all you needed was just a bit of polish, just a bit of shining to make you a great teacher. But the reality is that you need to be very intentional. In order to be intentional, there is a real science process behind it. The practice of teaching in our school is very much an evidence-based frame, and we need to understand that to help guide and help us make good judgments in the classroom. So, let us revisit a couple of key things. Education or teaching is about curriculum, and that is, it defines what our students are to learn. And we have, at our school, a number of texts to guide us. We're a Common Core school. We next generation science standards, and we try to ensure that every child gets a strong, keen access to the curricula. But it guides us, it tells us what needs to be taught. The next thing that we have to do is to program it. We need to organise it in such a way that we can have a good pacing guide, that we have a good structure, and that it's age relevant, and that we timetable it effectively across the year. And the notion of this helps us to provide a strong learning program. See, my key message in revisiting this understanding of curriculum and program is that we need to be very intentional in what we do. We need to make sure that we are well planned and well organised. How we deliver learning is really important. At our school, we have, as part of our pedagogical framework, what we call the 8 elements of an effective lesson. And you can look at that in another video clip at another time. But we're going to explore more about this with you when we meet during induction week. The next step is this notion around assessment. Assessment in our school is really important. We drive the learning from our curriculum that's well programmed and timetabled and then we implement it with a very strong pedagogical frame that's directed by our 8 elements of the effective lesson, and then we assess. There are key things about assessment. The first thing is that we need to ensure that there are 2 types of knowledge, our procedural knowledge and our declarative knowledge. The processes and the content, and they go together. When I'm wandering classrooms, checking school documentation, there are 4 key types of assessments that I'm looking for. You know, the tests, the pop quizzes, the open and closed questions. They're the formative activities that sort of guide the teacher in whether or not the children are understanding. It's their little mechanisms that teachers use, you know, to check for understanding throughout the lesson and across the unit. The second assessment group is those things that we call process assessments, whether or not the child has developed an understanding of the steps. This is followed by the product assessments, looking at the end artefact, whether that's been judged against a particular rubric or some content criteria. And then the fourth group is about self-assessments, children taking charge of their own learning, having a bit of agency over what's going on, and to be able to reflect and report upon that as well. So ultimately, assessment is really a data-driven practice. It's about the collection of evidence and then analysing what we've received so that we can then make some really good judgments about what needs to happen next for that particular children. Now, what do I mean by teaching judgments? That is the ability of teachers to accurately gauge the student achievement. Now, this is considered an important part of a teacher's professional competence, and as teachers often use their initial judgments as their primary source of information about student achievement. Teacher judgments are determinations made by teachers about the student's current achievement. And that knowledge helps us to predict where we're going to go next, what the child needs to attend to, and it impacts upon the teacher's ongoing instructional decision-making within the classroom. And this includes the pace of the unit, the level of support that they need to provide individual children, and also the level of task difficulty, particularly when we're trying to differentiate to support the student needs. Now, quality teaching is the aim of all this, from our curriculum to our programming to effective pedagogy to our assessment and teacher judgments. All that's bound up in this notion of quality teaching. And effective teachers, in our school and in other schools, have similar characteristics. And there are numerous research articles that tell us what quality teaching entails. And you might like to have a bit of a look at Google Scholar and read some of those reports. But in short, when I and the leadership team visit classrooms, we conduct formal and informal observations. We are looking with strategic intent at quality teaching. And that includes things like helping students learn through reflecting on their experiences. Now, again, that's why the starter or the hook segment of your lesson is so important. Getting the children to engage in critical reflection throughout the lesson is key. The types of activities that enable students to make their own judgments, things like comparing and contrasting. When you look at Mazzano's top 9 effective teaching strategies, this is a key element of the quality teaching framework that he uses. It's important that you pitch the content of your lesson at or just above the student's level. Not pitching the content of your lesson too low and not using appropriate critical thinking questions is letting our students down. We need to draw out the knowledge and the understanding required in order for the child to move forward, and making sure that I, as a teacher, have expert knowledge of my curriculum and what its content's all about is key to that. And I think the fourth area really is around this notion of relationships. Building a rapport with your students is key. But also, what's very important is building that relationship with your colleagues. Developing strong classroom management practices is essential in ensuring that we have quality teaching happening inside our classrooms. There is an expectation of excellence in our school. This is not a stand and deliver approach. We have no room for the tourist teacher here. What we want is effective teachers using evidence in their teaching practices and to be able to justify their reasoning for choosing specific teaching strategies for those students. And I suppose at the end of the day, the heart of what we're doing at Yasat is in this notion of teachers as researchers. We want you to make the best judgments about teaching and learning. We need you to adopt an action research approach to your teaching. And I think it's very straightforward. This notion is about finding out things, and that's what teachers do. They discern why some things work and some things don't. Why did this child grasp double addition very quickly and that child didn't? Why is this child always confusing constant blends, yet this child's not? And working out why that takes place so they can inform me of what my practice is going to be to help those children. Because at the heart of researching is information. Now, you do this by examining the evidence of your teaching and of the student learning, and you reflect upon your own practice. And when you provide high-quality assessments, they give you greater information to build the next learning experience for the students. You research that, and then you make judgments around it. See, by examining our assessment data, by looking at that evidence, we become researchers in our own right. Now, why is this important? Well, it's really important because it's job embedded. It's what you do on a day-to-day basis, and it's how we can help you become more effective in your role when discussing what's working and what's not working, and understanding why it's not working, and then trialling things that have worked in other places and may work here. It's important because it allows you to take control. I mean, how many times have you seen programs, commercial operators selling you stuff saying, you've got to do this program, you've got to do that program. But researching in your own classroom helps you determine what works and helps you design the next learning process that meets the needs of these particular children in your care. I mean, at the end of the day, once you understand, you want to be better tomorrow than you are today. And that's the central part of being and striving to be the effective teacher. Being a bit of a researcher in your classroom helps you to focus on what you want and what you need. And it gives us an opportunity to help you with your professional development. And at the end of the day, when we're researching what works in our classroom and what doesn't work, and trying to find ways and devise activities to improve, we're making sure that every child in our school makes the learning gains that are required. Ultimately, we want all our students to achieve more. So, what does it mean to research, and where do I start? Well, we're going to help you build this sort of mindset. But anyway, here are a few questions that you can repeat over and over when talking about key aspects of your classroom life. Maybe when you focus on a subject or a particular program or resources or even a teaching strategy. Asking these types of questions helps you to start thinking about your own practice. And when you start thinking and then reflecting, well then hopefully you will start to put in some answers and put in some ways of moving forward. So in summary, as a teacher you're going to collect data, and it's important that you are focused and very intentional about the data you collect. Once analysed, it will inform your teaching practice. And that's what we expect at our Yasat. See, effective teaching is always linked to the learning outcomes. Every unit of work you prepare has the assessment overview and assessment tasks completed before you even start the first lesson. We are trying to incorporate the visible learning principles into our teaching, and you need to evidence your performance data. Performance evidence is more robust and a reliable basis from which to make professional judgments and to objectively solve and answer classroom and school-based learning problems and questions of significance. Teaching at Al Yasat should be enjoyable and should excite you to move forward. At the end of the day, we all want what's best. The best possible learning outcomes for our students, the best possible learning outcomes for our colleagues, and for us to do a better job tomorrow than we are today. If you have any questions and want to know anything about our learning program, we look forward to sharing some of those answers to the questions that you might ask when we meet in August. But until then, keep smiling, and we'll see you soon.